Look, earlier in the morning, I was mentioning, and I quoted parts of a very long and rather strident piece written by Bryce Edwards, who is now kind of running his own little, what's it called, Bryce?
The Integrity Institute, Sean.
The Integrity Institute, which is funded by a millionaire, isn't it?
It's funded by some philanthropists in Christchurch
who are millionaires.
They will be multi-millionaires, yes.
Are they on the rich list?
No, no, not that rich.
Okay, so basically you're getting funded by someone who wants to have influence.
Yeah, it's ironic, isn't it?
What's their name?
Grant and Marilyn Nelson. So they have a charitable trust.
Okay, and they're Labourites. They're members of the Labour Party?
I don't think so. They kind of are pretty critical of Labour.
Okay, what political party are they part of? Are they Greenies or?
No, they're maybe, I don't know. They're environmentalists, but no, they're critical of all.
Oh, they are environmentalists. Okay,
they're like myself. They're critical of all politics across the political spectrum.
So they've paid you enough to leave academia, right?
Well, more like my lifeboat out of academia. It was a sinking ship.
Okay, so you now work for them full time?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're just working for some rich environmentalists, let's be clear.
Well, they are the people funding it, most of it actually.
Funding it?
The
they
institute,
fund you?
Well, they play for the institute, but we fundraise as well.
What do you mean the institute? That's a bit grand, isn't it, Bryce?
Maybe it is a bit grandiose, but you need to give some sort of name to these things.
Well, Bryce Edwards is the name you should give to it.
Maybe. But we fundraise. Look, we have over 1,000 paid subscribers to our Substack newsletter. That brings in a fair proportion of our income.
So you're a social media platform?
Well, that's part of it, yeah.
Okay, all right, Bryce. And Bryce, you've come out and you've published a piece. Well, it's just really an opinion piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
Off the back of the NBR Rich List, which comes out every year.
Yeah.
And inevitably gets some people outraged and other people inspired. And I think the NBR, to be honest, and knowing a few people, they just do it. It's probably the one thing NBR does every year that people take notice of. It's a great PR move.
Look, I'm a big fan of the NBR producing this each year. It's actually always well produced. It's well researched. It has a ton of information in it.
I hate to say it, I probably know more people than most New Zealanders who are on that rich list.
Lucky you.
I've never met one of them that said it's accurate.
Sure.
And they're always bitching that either overestimates their wealth or underestimates their wealth.
Of course. Yeah. And these things are private, these wealth figures. So they have to, sort of do a bit of speculation and joining the dots. So, of course, they'll get it wrong. But, no, I think it's actually a really good, helpful service they do for the public. Of course, you have to pay sort of $500 a year to sort of subscribe to the NBR. But, no, I think it's very useful. It gives a good idea of, like I say in the column, who's running the country, who are the big voices of business.
Just because you're rich doesn't mean you're running the country.
Well, it shouldn't.
Bryce.
I agree. But it often does mean, as I point out in this...
Well, you've lost your mind in this column. You're calling them oligarchs.
Well, I was being a bit colourful there, wasn't I?
Well, but, hang on. Are you being a serious journalist?
I'm not a journalist.
Are you reporting facts?
Look, I've never claimed to be a journalist.
It's just a bit of outrage porn.
No, I think I tried to put together an account of how politics intersects with business. And so I went through the list and I looked at what's the political nexus here? Who are the ones donating to the parties of government at the moment? Which ones are asking for tax breaks? Which ones are asking for regulations to be cut? Which ones are asking for changes to our foreign investment laws? And went through it all. It's as simple as that. It's trying to understand the politics of the most wealthy in the country and how they try to get what they want.
Well, they spend their money the way they want, don't they? And there's no law against that, is there?
No, nor should there be, of course. But
okay, so what's your beef then?
Look, my beef is we're living in a country that isn't as egalitarian as it used to be.
Isn't it?
No, you can just see from this wealth list, it used to be about a decade ago, $60 billion was the collective wealth of the rich list. Now it's $100 billion.
What's inflation? What's cumulative inflation been in that time?
Look, it's less than that. Absolutely.
Not much, mate.
Look at it in terms
of... Has the economy grown over time?
No, not much. Not much. Not much. So
but we put in cumulative inflation, we put the economy grown over time. Probably there hasn't been a lot more richness. Are there more people who are rich?
I'm sure there are.
Yeah, okay. So that would suggest to me egalitarianism grown.
Yeah, look, I think that if you look at how it's just
what's
increased
happened
in the
to
last
infant mortality in that time?
Oh, look,
what's happened to the average education, death and childbirth in that time?
Lots of things are progressing, absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic.
Look, I'm not saying that 2025 is a bad time to live. I'm saying that it's a bad time to be poor. I'm saying that
It's always a bad time to be poor, Bryce. There's never a good time to be poor.
And
But
look,
people aren't as poor as they used to be.
look, it wouldn't be so bad if all of these people were doing productive
Poor means
things.
you can't afford a second mobile phone.
Okay, maybe. I don't know about that. But look, a lot of these people on the list are investment. They're getting their money from investment, from the property sector. They're not actually
What
producing
proportion
anything.
of them are doing that?
Oh, look, I don't know. I haven't looked at that. But
Well,
I'd say
hang on.
a quarter
If
to a
you're
third.
according to a third, have you statistically done that? Or
Well-
is it just a feels that you've got?
No, I think so. Look, this was a quick piece I dashed off yesterday after the list came out. I don't think you should complain about that. There's nothing wrong with that. We are going to do more in-depth research into the list and what's in it, if that's what you're wanting.
But it would seem to me that it comes from a very... It's like you're the tall poppy syndrome, but you've got a ride-on bloody mower, Bryce.
Well, there's a bit of room for that, I think, in New Zealand.
Why?
Because this rich
Because
list...
that's what your rich donors want?
No, because that's how I think. That increasingly we've got this cheerleading for the most wealthy in society.
Yeah.
And that's what the NBR do each
Who?
year. And that's fine.
They
It's-
don't, actually. They're the most lefty commie newsroom you've ever seen.
I don't know
Not
if I agree.
lefty enough for Dita DeBoney, but, I mean, Bryce Edwards.
Well,
He's a Union Oxfam supporting little commie if you've ever seen one.
Who is?
Bryce Edwards.
Fred Edwards.
Fred Edwards, yeah.
Oh, no, I think he's fairly centrist. But, well, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. Look, and some of them are a bit woke, but that doesn't necessarily mean socialist or left-wing. Woke's more about social agendas around ethnicity, gender, and middle-class sort of... as we've talked about
Do you
before.
think people shouldn't be allowed to be too rich, Bryce? Is that really the
I
problem?
know that's a
Rich is
ridiculous
okay,
thing.
but not too much.
No, I think that's ridiculous.
Oh.
But I mean, you can always going to have your Elon Musks and your whatever's owning trillions of dollars. But it is a indictment on society and the political system that you're having a society where these people are so different from the rest of us and are arguing, as we saw in the Rich List yesterday, to make it even more like that. This is what we saw. They were advocating...
It's an indictment to have Mozart being so different than musicians of his
No,
generation. It
no,
is an
I do not think
indictment to
that.
have Picasso being...
No, of course not.
No, so why
No.
is being rich such a terrible
when
thing?
it's taken off other people, when it's extracted from the economy. So these rich listers have increased their value incredibly over the last few years, while
Well,
the
not
economy,
incredibly, just a little bit more than the rate of inflation and the growth of the economy
I
in
don't
general.
agree with that. But
Well,
we
have you
might
done an
we might
analysis
we
to
might
say that
disagree
that's
with
not
that.
true?
Well, I will.
But you haven't.
I'll come back and talk about that when I've done
Okay.
it. But nonetheless, in my view, the economy hasn't grown that much. Productivity hasn't gone up that much. These are people that are mostly just extracting value from a stagnant economy through essentially rents, through essentially not actually growing anything. So, and that's not good for anyone.
No, we should get into the farmers, shouldn't we? If only the
Maybe.
greenies would stop saying you can't have cows and that you should all plant it in useless Pinus radiata, you see. There are certain things that push people, and I mean, Don Brash has said it, this country's and this economy's ridiculous, what did he call it? Our obsession with property investment, with residential property investment, and we see it. But it's not surprising, and I did see a kernel in truth of what you wrote. And I looked back at a Media Watch a couple of weeks ago, and we look at the changes in mainstream media, the two big media companies in New Zealand, Stuff and the New Zealand Herald, are basically both just platforms for people to sell real estate, aren't they?
That is one of the big flaws in our economy.